a Friday night edition of the Aaron Torres Sports Podcast. I am your host, Aaron Torres. Hope everybody's doing well. Hope everybody enjoyed what was once again just another incredible day of college hoops. As you can see in the background, I am live again from Stadium Swim Circa Casino, Las Vegas, Nevada. Not gonna lie, a little chilly out here tonight. I got the winter coat on, but here is the cool thing. First of all, we appreciate Stadium Swim having us out the last 3 days. We've done 5 shows in 3 days. You can hear it in my voice. Torres, much like some of these teams playing 4 games in 4 days, not much left in the tank, but we appreciate Stadium Swim. This is the best place to come when you are in Las Vegas to watch games, whether you're here for the NCAA tournament next weekend, the NCAA tournament the week after, Final Four, Masters, MLB opening day, obviously NBA, NFL. And here's the cool thing. All these pools behind me, you can see the steam coming off. They are all heated. So you come to Stadium Swim, you can hang out all day. There were people at the pool all day. It's in the 50s today in Vegas. It did not stop the fun. So thank you to Stadium Swim. Busy show tonight. I'll tell you, we got a lot of ground to cover. We're going to start with those 2 SEC games. Tennessee, Kentucky, both lose. Who should we be more worried about? We'll talk a little bit with Arizona losing on top of Tennessee if North Carolina ends up with the number 1 seed, that 4th number 1 seed. And we'll get to some of the other big games, big results from the day on Friday, including Houston rolling. Just some of the other scores and notes. And, Purdue had some moments. And it was a really, really, really crazy day. UConn, St. John's, very busy day. Before we get started, very quickly, do want to remind you, bracket comes out on Sunday. By the way, we will have a bracket reaction show probably about 10 p.m. Eastern time on Sunday, so make sure to lock in there. And if you want to join the Aaron Torres Pod Bracket Challenge, here is the cool part. Go to bracketfanatics.com. 4 straight year we are working with them, and we have some good news. With Bracket Fanatics, you can sign up. You do not have to wait for the bracket to come out on Sunday. Join our bracket, bracketfanatics.com. This is all you got to do. Go to bracketfanatics.com where it says sponsored bracket. Click that sponsored bracket tab. You'll see the Aaron Torres pod. You can sign up. If you've signed up before, just put in your email. You're automatically signed up. $1,000 in cash prizes courtesy of Bracket Fanatics. So don't wait. Link is in the show description. Make sure to sign up for Bracket Fanatics. By the way, we're also brought to you by BetUS Sportsbook. Listen, we're working with BetUS all March long. We love them. We appreciate them. We appreciate their support. BetUS, best offer going in sports betting right now on the net. How about this? Your first 3 deposits, they will match 125%. So you put in $100, they give you $125. You lose all that, put in another $100, they give you another $125. You lose all that, get another $125 when you put in $100, up to $2,000. Thank you to BetUS. With all that said, it was a crazy Friday in college hoops. So let's not waste any more time. Let's get to the topic of the day. Topic of the day, listen, to me, first of all, this is just the Thursday and Friday of champions. I've said it for years. It is my favorite time on the college hoops calendar. There are so many games going on. You get these great teams playing teams that know each other 2-3 days in a row. I'm not saying the first 2 days of March Madness are bad. I'm saying these 2 days are special, right? You have a team like UConn playing 3 days in a row, a team like North Carolina playing 3 days in a row. But where we want to start on Friday is actually 2 teams from the SEC that ended up not going very far, and that was Tennessee and Kentucky. The top 2 seeds in the SEC tournament are out in stunning fashion, and I think they are both very disappointing for 2 very different reasons. So I want to go ahead and get in. Tennessee falling 73-56, Kentucky losing 97-87. So when I look at these 2 games, the place I do want to start is with the University of Kentucky, because to me, the Kentucky loss is just so disappointing on so many levels. There's the big picture, the little picture, all that good stuff. But why I bring it up, 97-87, I think it's disappointing for a couple different reasons. First off, this Kentucky team, it felt like coming into this game, they had turned a corner. They had obviously won they had won 5 in a row, They had won, 7 of their last 8. The only loss was the buzzer beater to LSU. And bluntly, and I've said this, is that I believe that LSU loss woke them up. They had a big lead. They let their foot off the gas. And that was the game where they kind of sat there and said, you know what? We got to put together a full 40 minutes. And that's what they've been doing since. Beat Bama. They obviously took care of Tennessee in the season finale at Thompson-Boling Arena. What I'll also say, I remember talking about it maybe on the preview show this morning, Friday morning, maybe late Thursday. I can't remember. All these shows are running together now. But what I did say was, I wonder if Kentucky, if there's going to be a little bit of kind of a big head, right? You beat Tennessee. Everybody's telling you how great you are. You're the team that nobody wants to see in your bracket. You can put up 100 on anybody. Would you come out ready to go? Would you come out locked in? And I think that's the most disappointing part about this Kentucky game. They flat out did not come in ready to play. You look at this game, first of all, they were down 8-1 before you could even blink. That was frustrating in and of itself. They obviously at various points bounced back, took the lead, but they could just never get any momentum. And it just felt like even late in the game, when they would make a run, something dumb would happen. I remember, about 4 or 5 minutes to go, they cut the lead to 6. Texas A&M immediately comes down the floor, gets a bucket, makes the lead back out to 8. And from there, Kentucky never really got going. And so when I look at this, why this game is disappointing, first off, let me say this. Credit to Texas A&M. I don't want to make this all about Kentucky. Texas A&M came out and won, but at the same time, even in Texas A&M winning, and I know they've won now 5 games in a row, a lot of it's on Kentucky. How about this for a stat? Texas A&M scored 90 points twice this season. Both were against Kentucky. Texas A&M averages 73 points per game. Kentucky dropped 97 points Texas A&M dropped 97 points in this game. Texas A&M as a team shoots 27% from 3. They shot 42% in this game. And so it was a complete lack of effort. And here, I think that's probably the most disappointing part, is you have this incredible home crowd. You know how much this event means to your fans, and you just didn't come out ready to play. More importantly, I think what it really does, it's a concern, because this is now a trend in the SEC tournament. You know, Kentucky is now 1-5 in their last 6 SEC tournament games. The only win, a narrow win over Vanderbilt, I believe it was 2 years ago. Last year, lost in their opener to Vandy. This year, lose in their opener to Texas A&M, a Texas A&M team that was very much on the bubble that I think probably clinched a spot. And so it's disappointing for so many reasons. One, because I believe you regressed. You took a step back. You did not come out ready to play. There was no effort on defense, and there was no urgency. I know you got a bunch of freshmen. I know that they're new to March basketball, but there has to be more urgency at this time, in this moment. And I understand the frustration for Kentucky fans. I think beyond that, what is especially frustrating is things were breaking very nicely for you. Now, admittedly, as I'm recording here, Florida is putting the finishing touches on a beatdown of Alabama. But I bring it up because Kentucky has that home court advantage at the SEC tournament. Now, Tennessee loses in the morning, and you're sitting there saying, wait a second now, we're going to have all the tickets. Nobody's going to be here. Everybody is going to be a Kentucky fan in this building, and you lose to a Texas A&M team that you simply shouldn't. If you're looking for a little silver lining, listen, I saw some Kentucky guys and media members say this, but with Kentucky, if you were going to have a bad night, I guess it's good that it happened now. And I know that's not what a Kentucky fan wants to hear, but if there's any silver lining, maybe you got it out of your system. Maybe they got that final, wait a second now, we got to bring it every single night reminder. And hopefully losing in the SEC tournament helps them understand the finality of what March basketball is all about. It's disappointing. I think it's especially disappointing when you don't come out in, as I said, an event that means so much to your fans. You know, it's funny. I've talked about this before, but Kentucky fans love Nashville, love the SEC tournament. I've talked to them. I know that so many of you spend your year's savings. You take your vacation time around the SEC tournament. And so to see this team out on Friday, There's no other way to put it other than that it is disappointing. It's a disappointing loss. You do not play well, and you just cannot have defensive efforts like this going forward when you're allowing a team that averages 73 points a game to score 97 in a loss. If you're looking for silver lining, listen, Dillingham was incredible off the bench as usual. Reed Shepherd was incredible off the bench again as usual. I'm not going to do the whole conversation about why are they not starting. That's 2 months ago. That's going to come up if they continue to struggle in March, if they have a disappointing effort, whatever. We're not going to go there. But to me, it's all about the defense. It has nothing to do with the starting lineup. It has nothing to do with this. It has nothing to do with that. Yes, you want to play your best players, but you also need more urgency on the defensive end. Again, when you come out and you're immediately down 8-1, that's on you. That's on your veterans. That's on your leaders. Antonio Reese, fifth-year guy. Adu Thiero was there last year. Agana and Yenso was there last year. You need more urgency. Kentucky, they will have time to bounce back. I think this just about solidifies them as a 3 seed come Selection Sunday. I'll be curious where they end up. Saw Joe Lunardi's latest bracket has them as the 3 seed in the Midwest with Purdue. Don't think that would be the worst straw if they could get it, but we'll see what happens now as Kentucky is headed home from the SEC tournament. It is worth noting from the Texas A&M perspective, credit to them. Listen, I was critical. Buzz Williams, it looked like, what was the loss? They lost to Arkansas, then they lost another game. And I said they weren't going to the tournament. And Buzz Williams, it's year 5, 1 NCAA tournament bid, 0 tourney wins. This one feels like it should clinch it. Now we'll see, because Buzz Williams, we know what happened a few years ago. First team left out of the field. But I think this clinches it. They have won 5 straight games. And this was the signature win that they needed. 2 great wins against Kentucky. But it is worth noting Texas A&M also took 2 losses to Arkansas, a loss to Vanderbilt. So if they don't make it, they ultimately have nobody to blame but themselves. Let's go ahead and switch gears to the other big-name team in the SEC that just did not show up. Let's go ahead and talk about the Tennessee Volunteers. They played the Mississippi State Bulldogs, and this was a lot like the Kentucky game. Now, we didn't know at the time because Kentucky hadn't played since then, but Tennessee shows up completely unprepared. They get mopped. Or as Stephen Pearl said, they got barbecued by the Mississippi State Bulldogs. Final score 73-56. And I think, in my opinion, there are a lot of reasons that this is worse than even the Kentucky loss. Let me explain why. First of all, Kentucky, I'm not making excuses, but young team coming off that huge win at Thompson-Boling Arena, there's not an excuse for the letdown, but you do sort of understand it. Tennessee, that is a veteran team coming off an embarrassing home loss on Senior Day. Now, I know they clinched the SEC regular season title before that, but at the same time, it is frustrating if you're a Tennessee fan because you're coming off of a loss and you want a better effort in this game. I think the most disappointing thing is much like the Kentucky game, just no effort from the beginning. And again, veteran team, a lot of your fans spending their hard-earned money. It's one thing if you just lose to a better team like St. John's did or like whoever did. But Mississippi State is not better than Tennessee. I'm sorry. I know Mississippi State beat them early in the SEC part of the season. But at the same time, that does not matter to me. You cannot have this kind of effort if you are Tennessee and you are a legitimate national championship contender like guys like me have said. Again, 19 points in the first half. Just a total lack of effort. And I'll tell you this. I do think, to me, beyond just the effort, beyond the fact that they were coming off a loss, this was especially frustrating for 2 very important reasons. And I think it's concerning for 2 very important reasons. One, I've been one of the guys. I've been defending Tennessee. But I will say that Kentucky loss to end the regular season did kind of open my eyes because Dalton Knecht went for 40. Now, granted, Kentucky's one of the elite offensive teams in college basketball. But you're going to, at some point in the tournament, run into a team that can put up 80, 85 points. And so I think the defense has regressed a little bit. And at the same time, when Dalton Knecht goes for 40 and you still lose at home, that is a bad sign. Well, why do I bring it up? It is because Dalton Knecht on Friday afternoon in Nashville finished with 14 points on what could only be described as probably one of his worst games overall, 4 of 17 from the field. So you want to credit Mississippi State, but if you're a Tennessee fan, every time somebody like me says something positive about Tennessee, you know what people say? We know what happens in March. Oh, by the way, what happens when Dalton Connect isn't going off? And I hate to say it, but those people were proven right today. And I do think, in my opinion, it has changed my perspective on the Tennessee Volunteers. So Tennessee loses the other pressing issue, the other concerning issue. If you're a Tennessee fan, listen, it's the Rick Barnes effect. And I think the Rick Barnes stuff is mostly overrated. He has made 2 of the last 4 Sweet 16s, 2 of the last 4 NCAA tournaments. He's gone to the second weekend, but he has had teams that are good enough to go to the Final Four, has never gotten, he made 2 Sweet 16s, never gotten to an Elite 8. I know the Purdue game in 2018 was kind of crazy, whatever. But I just bring it up because, until he actually breaks through, by the way, it was 2019, that Purdue Elite 8 or Sweet 16 game. But until he actually breaks through, there's always going to be questions about him, and there's always going to be questions about this team. I do think with this loss, which we're going to get into in a minute, I think it probably locks Tennessee in on the 2 line come NCAA tournament selection Sunday. But just a disappointing effort from the other 2 teams in the SEC. By the way, yes, my voice is absolutely cracking. It is cold, and I have done a lot of shows today. I'll tell you what, producer Matt, I do want to hear one word from our partners. We'll come back. I want to talk the Arizona loss and what it means for North Carolina. Then we'll get into some of the other results today. Quick break. Word from our partners. Be right back.
America's favorite sportsbook and casino. Live betting and racebook. We're celebrating 30 years with a historic offer. A 125% sign-up bonus on your first 3 deposits. Plus 10% gambler's insurance. Get started today. BetUS, where the game begins.
Back. All right, everybody. I'm back. Gonna be back. So, we just talked about the Tennessee loss. There is significance to that. Because about 8-9 hours after Tennessee lost, we got to go out to the Pac-12 tournament. I was at the Pac-12 tournament, and what I told you could happen on Thursday night's show did, as Arizona ended up losing this game. So if you listen to last night's show, we were at the Circa Sportsbook. I had gone to the Pac-12 tournament, and I'll tell you what, I came down with a heavy case of Arizona fever. By the way, for people just watching the background, just tuning in, we are live from Stadium Swim at Circa Casino. We love Stadium Swim. We appreciate their support. We've done 5 shows in 3 days from here. We appreciate them having us. We will be back to a normal schedule. We'll have a Selection Sunday show about 10 p.m. Eastern time on Sunday. But with that said, let's get back to the game that I was just talking about. And as I said, on Thursday's show, I went to the Pac-12 tournament. I saw Arizona in person. And when I saw Arizona, like I said, came down with a heavy case of Wildcat fever. Oh, they can do anything. They can match up with anybody. They can beat anybody in college basketball. But, what did Torres also tell you? Torres also said the problem with Arizona is consistency. Can you get it from them every single night, night after night? Some nights they look incredible. They win at Duke. Some nights they lose to Stanford on the road. Stanford just fired their coach. Sometimes they lose to Oregon State at the buzzer. And so the question was, can they do it consistently? 3 games at the Pac-12 tournament and in the NCAA tournament. Well, and it took all of 24 hours to get an answer to that question. The answer is no, as they lose to Oregon. Final score 67-57. Now, I was not able to go to this game because I was getting ready for this show. And what I will tell you, I had a couple buddies covering the game. Jason Shear, Mike Luke was following their tweets. And they said that this wasn't necessarily a vintage no-show from Arizona. That they just had open shots. They weren't falling. It just wasn't their night, whatever. But I do think it's disappointing for a few reasons. One, much like Kentucky, much like Tennessee, huge home court advantage. We were at the Pac-12 tournament on Thursday. There was 95% Arizona fans. So all those fans came out. By the way, Tommy Lloyd A lot of great wins, some disappointing losses, but he had never lost in the Pac-12 tournament. Back-to-back Pac-12 tournaments, championships coming into this one. It's the final Pac-12 championship. But I think the most disappointing part is I think you were in position to get that last number 1 seed. And we're going to talk about North Carolina in a minute. But at the same time, where it becomes frustrating for Arizona is you have a pretty good resume. You won at Duke. You have a situation where on top of winning at Duke, you also had a couple other good wins throughout the season. You destroyed Wisconsin when Wisconsin was playing well. You really had a pretty solid resume going into this game. And then, oh, by the way, when Tennessee loses, it felt to me like you were in very good position to potentially then felt like you were in position to potentially then get that number 1 seed. So you lose this game to a bad Oregon team. They are not going to the NCAA tournament unless they win the Pac-12 tournament, which is very much a possibility now. And it's disappointing because you lose out on the chance at that number 1 seed. I look at this game. I think to me, that's really the only major takeaway. Really, when this Arizona team that can put up 100 points scores 59, you know it's a bad game. You know it's an especially bad game when Umar Ballo, their big guy, probably their 7th or 8th most gifted offensive player, is their leading scorer. Caleb Love was not good, 2 for 11 from the field. Pella Larson, 2 for 6. Keyshawn Johnson, my guy, 3 for 7, 38% shooting, and 5 of 19 from 3. Listen, brackets are going to come out on Sunday. I do think ultimately for Arizona, it's more about getting in the West, trying to have a home court advantage in Los Angeles. But listen, this is a team that disappointed last year. I don't think they're losing to a 15 seed this year, but I just don't know that you can trust them. Forget for 6 straight games, but even for 4 straight games to get to a Final Four. As I said on Thursday night, they have the talent to beat anybody, but we just need to see them do it. Really quickly, with Arizona losing, with Tennessee losing, I think it has set up a very interesting scenario where I do believe that the North Carolina Tar Heels could be in position to get the 4th number 1 seed, okay? So we know Houston's locked up the number 1 seed in the South. We know Purdue's locked up the 1 seed in the Midwest. We know UConn's locked up the 1 seed in the East. The big question is, who was going to get that 4th number 1 seed? Was it going to be Tennessee? Was it going to be Arizona? And I believe that North Carolina has probably already clinched that 1 seed, and I certainly think they will clinch that 4th number 1 seed if they were to win the ACC tournament on Saturday night. As we record here, we do not yet have a final, at least that I have seen, in terms of who they will be playing next. It looks like Virginia and NC State is still going on, a real barn burner, I'm sure. 65-64 in overtime, so a real thriller over there. But listen, from the North Carolina perspective, listen, one, they have a very good resume. The thing I think that stands out about North Carolina, and I'm not going to do the whole, they have 11 quad 1 wins and 1 quad. It's like, no, nobody cares. We don't need to go through the whole team sheet. But you look at the resume, most of their losses are pretty good. They're 27-6. If they obviously win tomorrow, they'll be 28-6 through 34 games. The out-of-conference losses, UConn on a neutral, Kentucky on a neutral, Villanova on a neutral. In the ACC, they swept Duke. They beat Oklahoma on a neutral court. Oh, by the way, they have a couple not great losses at Syracuse, at Georgia Tech, but nothing absolutely crippling. So to me, I do think if Carolina wins, I do think they are in position to get that number 1 seed. I think the other thing too, and listen, I understand that we no longer use the last 10 games as a determinant in who gets the, seeding and who gets in the tournament. But what I will say, and I do think this is important, is that I do think there's a perception standpoint. Arizona loses in the semis. Tennessee loses in the quarters. If Carolina goes on to win the ACC, even with the ACC down, I think they would be in pretty good shape to get that 4th number 1 seed. Credit to Carolina. They had a dogfight from Pitt, but they survived. I think if they win the ACC championship, and as of right now, we don't yet know who they're playing, they will be your 4th number 1 seed. Really quickly, before we get to the rest of the schedule, do want to remind you, and I've told you before and I told you earlier, for the fourth straight year, we are working with BracketFanatics.com as our Aaron Torres Pod Bracket Challenge. Bracket Fanatics is great. We love working with them. You can sign up for my bracket now. Go to BracketFanatics.com, click on the Sponsored Bracket tab, and you'll see the Aaron Torres Pod, $1,000 prize pool. So make sure to take advantage. But here's the cool part about Bracket Fanatics. You don't just have to join my bracket. You can start your own. How about that? Everybody wants to run a bracket pool. And the great thing about Bracket Fanatics is you can start your own. It can be like mine, which is free to enter. Mine is free $99, okay? But also, and this is the cool part that I love about Bracket Fanatics. Bracket Fanatics, if you want to do a pay pool, okay? So let's say you have $5 entry, $10 entry, $20 entry. You can do all of that on Bracket Fanatics. So I start a bracket. Mine's free. Yours, it's $10 to enter. Everybody that enters can pay on Bracket Fanatics. They collect the money for you, and they distribute it for you. No chasing down doors from accounting. No chasing down your Uncle Lenny who never wants to pay you a dime but wants his money when he wins right away. No. You don't deal with that. This is the best bracket pool place to go. They wipe the floor with all the loser competitors, with Yahoo, with ESPN. Screw those guys. You want to go with BracketFanatics.com. Again, join a bracket if you want to join the sponsor bracket with me, but start your own bracket, start bracket tab. You can start it. And again, they'll collect money for you. They'll distribute money for you. You can even make bets within the app. You want to bet your buddy $10. Hey. I know we got all this going on, but I bet you $10 North Carolina's beating Tennessee. Okay, let's put $10 on it. So it's a cool app. Love working with them. Quickly, do want to get to some other things in college hoops from Friday. And if you are watching live, you can always feel free to drop your comments in the YouTube chat. We will get to some of them at the end. Couple other games. So one thing that stood out to me, by the way, apparently I pissed off some people when I said this. I found it interesting that on Friday, think about what happened on Friday. Arizona loses. Tennessee loses. Kentucky loses. Purdue wins by 5. UConn wins by 5. North Carolina barely survives. Houston wins. What is the final score here? They played a Texas Tech team that is going to the NCAA tournament. They win by 23 points. Listen, I'm not going to do the whole they're unbeatable. We talked about UConn last night. I said, listen, UConn's great, but nobody in this sport is unbeatable, and it's the same with Houston. Somebody can beat them. They can lose on any given night like anybody else. But I just think it's hard to think of a team that is playing better than them right now, and that's including UConn, who is playing awesome. That's including North Carolina, who's playing awesome. But you look at Houston, I mean, they're obliterating everybody, okay? How about this? Win by 23 on Friday night. They beat a tournament team in TCU by 15 in the quarterfinals. They were up by like 25. Season finale, they beat Kansas by 30. You go back to before that, they haven't even had competitive games. I keep saying this with Houston. Since the second week of January, it's March 15th as I record here. They have one loss at Kansas. So I'm just telling you, listen, I never do. This is who my pick is before the bracket comes out. UConn, Houston, I think to me are just playing so well right now. And I just don't know what the blueprint is to beat Houston because they play so hard on defense. They make you so uncomfortable. Houston wins. They dominate. Not surprising. It looks like they will officially play Iowa State in the championship game. By the way, Iowa State is really good. If they're going to struggle, maybe it's against them. Remember, Iowa State did beat them in Ames to open Big 12 play earlier this year. Iowa State's another one. I don't know if they have enough offense to win a national championship, but I could see them in Phoenix at the Final Four. Really quickly, let's go to the Big East. UConn, St. John's. You want to talk about a war, okay? UConn won. UConn was in control. I'm not going to say, UConn wins 95-90, but in the second half, they were largely in control. UConn fans got mad because I said that Houston dominated and UConn survived. Whatever. But I bring it up because this was an incredible game, and I actually want to start with St. John's, okay? We've talked a lot about St. John's, Big Rick Energy, Rick Pitino. This team is so much better than they were 4 or 5 weeks ago, okay? Remember, we've talked about it. But since that rant where Pitino said, oh, you guys, all my players are too fat and too slow, basically what he said, they had won 6 straight games. And you watch this game, they are a completely different team. They are a team that is fearless. They're fast. I saw it was interesting. Rick Pitino did an interview with John Fanta and Jim Calhoun after the win over Seton Hall. And he said, look, I know my team can score, and I know we're not great defensively. So I just have to go ahead and accept that we have to exert our energy on offense and that we're going to give up points. And so I only bring it up. UConn was coming in. They're a top 10 defense with Donovan Clingan, top 5 defense with Donovan Clingan. And St. John's put up 90 points on them. In this game, by the way, Dennis Jenkins, 27 points. This kid has been unbelievable. This is the kid who followed Rick Pitino from Iona to St. John's. You talk about an eye for talent. I always get this guy's name confused, by the way. St. John's fans, don't kill me. It's either Denise or Dennis Jenkins. I never get it right. But I bring it up because this kid was at Iona. By the way, Walter Clayton, who is tearing things up in the SEC at Florida, was at Iona. It shows you the incredible eye that Rick Pitino has for talent. St. John's best player, Florida's best player were at Iona in the MAC last year. So with St. John's, what I see, honestly, I see a team that, yes, they lost in the Big East Championship, the Big East semifinals, but one, as we discussed Thursday, this was their first semifinal Friday since, how about this? Their first semifinal Friday since 2000, since Bootsy Thornton was on the team. But 2, what Friday night showed me, I think this is a team that's going to get in the tournament as a 10 seed, 9 seed, whatever it is. They're going to win some games. Like, if you're a 2 seed and you got St. John's in your bracket, good luck with you. Because if they can put up 90 on Iowa State, they can put up 90 on just about anybody. By the way, I don't want to speak it into existence. It feels like, I'm trying to think of how the math would have to work. If Kentucky's a 3 seed, I guess probably they wouldn't play St. John's. But couldn't you see Kentucky being a 2 seed somewhere, being right lined up with St. John's, Pitino versus Kentucky, Pitino versus Calipari in round 2? I could totally see it happening. We'll see what happens. Credit to St. John's. From the UConn perspective, listen, we talk about them every game, and it's weird because UConn fans, I think, still feel disrespected. Like, people aren't talking about our team enough. There's nothing else to say. They're a wagon. They shot in the second half on Thursday against Xavier 73%. In this game, by the way, 53 points in the second half. In this game, they shot 57% as a team. They shot 50% from 3. They just have so many guys that can beat you. Tristan Newton, 20 first half points, 25 for the game, 9 assists, 6 rebounds, 20 points for Cam Spencer, another 4 for 5 shooting night from 3. Those 2 guys have carried them, and that's the crazy thing about UConn, is it's been an up and down year for Donovan Clingan, dealt with injuries. He only has 6 points in this game, does have 4 blocks and controls the paint. Alex Caravan with a nice little 14 points for them. UConn now advances to face Marquette on Saturday night at Madison Square Garden. I'll tell you this, it does feel a little fitting in my opinion, and I'll tell you why. UConn in the last year has done just about everything. They have won a national championship. They have won a Big East regular season title. The only thing that they have not done, they put players in the NBA. The only thing that they have not done, they have not won the Big East tournament. Remember, last year Marquette won the Big East regular season. They won the Big East tournament. Well, UConn beats Marquette to win the Big East regular season, or they don't beat them to win the regular season, but they win the regular season. Now they get to play Marquette at Madison Square Garden Saturday night to take the only trophy that they have not won in the past, 13 months. So that is going to be a great game. Looking across the rest of college hoops, listen, a lot of stuff is actually still going on. Florida advances in the SEC. They just laid waste to Alabama. Listen, I've talked enough about Alabama. I think that Alabama has overachieved. By the way, a big story out of Alabama. I know I'm going in a lot of different directions. Nate Oates actually gets a contract extension on Friday afternoon. It is announced just hours after Michigan fires Juwan Howard. We'll get to Juwan Howard in a minute. But I solely bring it up because when I look at that situation, first of all, Nate Oates is locked in for the long term. I give Greg Byrne so much credit. Greg Byrne is a guy. There is nothing else to say other than him locking up Nate Oates so nobody can come in and get him. Michigan can't come get him. Remember, Nate Oates is from Michigan. Michigan State, Izzo's going to retire eventually. We know the Kentuckies, the Louisvilles, the whoever, whenever they have a job opening, Louisville, of course, is open right now, is going to want him. So Nate Oates gets that extension, but I think this year he has overachieved with this group. Florida, though, many a time, I said it many a time, I think Florida is one of the most underrated teams in college basketball. And it was funny, my best bet tonight was Florida against Alabama. And it's because they play the same way. I just think Florida has better players. They're another team. I mentioned St. John's is like a potential 10 seed that I think could make the second weekend. I think Florida's trending as a 4, 5, 6. That is not a team I want to see in my bracket because they play fast. They score. Their guards are really good. They take care of business against Alabama. I'll tell you this. I was sitting there. I've mentioned it many a time. I don't know why I keep saying many times. But my buddy here, producer Matt, went to Auburn. Is Auburn just being like grossly underrated right now? So Auburn plays South Carolina. I did not bet this game, but I thought South Carolina could pull off the upset. Yeah, not so much. Auburn wins by 31 points, okay? This was a masterclass defensive effort from Auburn. Hold South Carolina to 26 points in the first half. And on the game, how about this? South Carolina shoots 28% from the field. Saw Justin Hawkinson, a good buddy of mine from On3, tweeted out that right now at this second, according to Ken Palm, Auburn is the only top 10 offense and defense in all of college basketball. Now, other metrics have UConn in that category as well. The metrics don't love Auburn, or the metrics do love Auburn. They don't have a lot of great wins, but if you can be that good on offense, you can be that good on defense, you can play with and beat just about anybody. How about this? Auburn, Mississippi State, and then on the other side of the bracket, you have Florida facing Texas A&M for the right to play for an SEC title. Trying to think if I missed anything else. We talked ACC, Big 12, Houston will play Iowa State. We talked about that. The Mountain West is going on as we speak. By the way, we do have a final. We do have a final in the ACC. Should mention NC State does beat Virginia. NC State will play UNC for the ACC title. Credit my guy, Kevin Keats. Listen, I've always liked Kevin Keats. I've had him on the show a few times. He was a guy that I think there was some hot seat buzz. I think he would have survived this year anyway. But I just bring it up because I think you make the ACC championship game. You don't really have to worry about losing your job after this year. It's also worth noting NC State, along with Oregon, are now both in position to steal NCAA tournament bids. NC State's the type of team that if they don't win the ACC tournament, they are not getting into the NCAA tournament. Same with Oregon. And so you go ahead and you look at what is going on right now. If you're an Indiana State fan, if you're a Providence fan, we'll talk about Providence in a minute. If you're a Pitt fan, if you're a Wake Forest fan, any of these teams that are on the bubble, Texas A&M, the last thing that you want is for NC State or Oregon to win their respective conferences. But from the bubble perspective, listen, I thought Friday was pretty straightforward. I think Providence would have clinched a bid for sure. They beat Marquette. I think the Creighton win keeps them on the bubble. I don't think they were on the bubble till they played on Thursday night. I think they're kind of in that Dayton last four in, first four out. I hope they're in. I think Kim English has actually done a very good job this year. Best player, Bryce Hopkins. Well, not their best player, but one of their key players, Bryce Hopkins, gets hurt early. He has done a very good job. So Providence probably on the bubble very much. Texas A&M, listen, I think the win today clinched an NCAA tournament bid for Texas A&M. Trying to think of who else. Mississippi State, I think, was already in. They are certainly in now with the win over Tennessee. Maybe that even bumps them up a seed line. I mean, I think there was a possibility though unlikely they would have been in Dayton. That's not even in the conversation anymore. They get the win. And a couple kind of bubble games of note right now as we are recording here in real time. It is about midnight Eastern. And there are two bubble games of consequence going on. Colorado leads Washington State at the half. I think if Colorado wins, they are definitely in. New Mexico's an interesting one. I've seen guys like John Rothstein say that the win over Boise State on Thursday clinched an NCAA tournament bid for them. The game at the Mountain West has not started yet against Colorado State. But I bring it up because Rothstein said he thinks they're in. My buddy Jeff Grammer, who covers the team, said he thinks that they're in, or New Mexico fans think that they're in. So we will see. But I think if New Mexico wins this game, they are definitely in the NCAA tournament. Really quickly, we're going to get some questions in a minute, but do very quickly just want to talk about a job opening that I mentioned a few minutes ago. Michigan has let go of Juwan Howard, and this was a very interesting one because a couple things. One, Juwan Howard's obviously a prominent alum, and I really wondered if they were going to get rid of him after the season. I don't think he wanted to be there anymore. I don't think that he's all bent out of shape, that it did not work out. He's got plenty of money in the bank. He will have opportunities in the NBA. But this is just a wild situation to think about, okay? Remember, he takes over for John Beilein. John Beilein leaves the cupboard completely full. Year two, it's funny. I remember in 2021, that was the year after COVID, empty arenas, all that stuff. I was here in Vegas the week before conference championships, and Michigan clinched the Big Ten regular season title at home while I was in Vegas. I was doing some radio stuff, and I bring it up. I remember him on the court. He was crying. He was happy. And it was a great story about what he did for his alma mater. The problem, which became increasingly clear, is that as John Beilein's guys left, the culture eroded. It just did. I mean, that second year, think about it, they had NBA dudes. They had Franz Wagner. They had Chaundi Brown. Isaiah Livers isn't an NBA guy, but Hunter Dickinson. And then as time went on, you could start to see the cracks. You could start to see the problems. And the funny thing is, talent was not one of the problems. Kobe Buffkin was an NBA draft pick last year. Hunter Dickinson was all Big Ten. Juwan's younger son was drafted in the top 10. But there were issues. He had his issue with the Wisconsin coach. There was the issue with the strength and conditioning coach. So I just think it was time for him to go. By the way, I was thinking about this. Imagine if I told you March of 2021, Michigan football is coming off a 2-4 season and everybody wants Jim Harbaugh out. Juwan Howard is coming off a Big Ten regular season championship and a trip to the Elite Eight. Imagine 3 years later saying they're both out, Harbaugh's won a natty, and Juwan Howard, it completely crumbled. But I bring it up. That job is open. I'll tell you this. Michigan's a really good job. Michigan is a really good job, and I am curious to see what types of people want it. Now, the one thing I will say about Michigan, there's something weird with their admissions because remember, Caleb Love committed to Michigan last summer, then was not admitted to the school. Terrence Shannon Jr., 2 off seasons ago, we were led to believe, I don't think he ever publicly committed to Michigan, but it was believed that he was going to Michigan, doesn't get into school. Now he's at Illinois. They're a top 15 team in the country. So there's some admission stuff, but it's a great school, great history, great recruiting area. And I think it's gonna get some very interesting names involved. First off, I think it's probably not of interest to him. I'd at least call John Beilein and see, hey man, you want one more 3-year run, get us back on track. You get to have a better taste in your mouth at the end of your career. Because remember, he left Michigan to go to the NBA. He was with the Cleveland Cavaliers. I think he made it half a season and then was fired or quit or whatever. There was the issue with, he said something in a team meeting, I forget, and the players didn't like him and da-da-da-da-da and this and that. I'd at least call him. The other name that I think is interesting, I think Nico Medved, the head coach at Colorado State. Colorado State's playing right now. They're going to a second NCAA tournament in 3 years. I mentioned him with Ohio State. He kind of plays that spacing ball movement type offense. I think he could be really successful there. You start to look at some of the other guys. Dusty May is going to get the phone call. I get it. Dusty May, by the way, he can only take one job. Louisville fans think they're getting them. Ohio State fans think they're getting them. Michigan fans think they're getting them. I will be curious with the Michigan and Ohio State jobs open together, which is deemed to be better. I think Ohio State's probably because, let's be honest, it's a little easier to get kids into school there. But Michigan's a great job. I think they will get a high caliber guy. They recruit well. And I'll say this too. If you can retain the guys on the roster, I think there's some pieces there that you can work with going forward. Now, they need to be coached up, but you look at some of the guys on that team right now. Doug McDaniel, there were obviously some issues. Remember, this was the kid that wasn't traveling because his grades were so bad. He's a very talented player. Terrace Reed is another young guy, I think, with upside. So there is talent in that program. The question becomes who takes that job. I think it makes a ton of sense for Nico Medved, but I think there could be, this is the type of job, I'll say really quickly, this is the type of job that somebody who has a good job that you don't think would be interested, they could make that phone call behind the scenes and say, hey, I know you haven't thought about me, but that's a job that I'd be interested in. I think we're going to go ahead and wrap here really quick. Producer Matt, do we have any questions? We have a great crowd, over 1,000 people watching on YouTube, or over 1,000 people watching on Twitter plus YouTube. Excuse me. I appreciate your support. Let's see here. SEC, best conference, nothing but athletes. Listen, I agree. Big 12 is really good too. Big 12, they're athletes and they defend their you-know-what up. The other thing with the Big 12, I think we think of like the SEC, it just means more, money and NIL and this and that. All those Big 12 schools have a lot of NIL. They take care of their guys, all that good stuff. I just bring it up because I think that the SEC and the Big 12 are 1 and 1A. And I think when you look at the SEC, listen, I know we open with a Kentucky loss. What does it mean, all that? But Kentucky can make a run. Florida can make a run. Auburn can make a run. I know everyone's down on Tennessee. They can make a run. Texas A&M, if they get their guards playing like they did today, I think they can make a run as well. Any other questions, Producer Matt, from the audience? Who thinks Kentucky's defense tonight was horrendously bad? From Canada. You know who thinks it was terrible? Your boy Torres. When Texas A&M is averaging 73 points per game coming into this game, and you give up 97, that is not good. And oh, by the way, again, Texas A&M broke the 90-point barrier twice this season, both times against Kentucky. Anything else here? I really appreciate your guys' support. I'm having so much fun doing these post-game shows. As I said, we'll be back on Sunday night for a bracket reaction show. I'm not sure you can put defense and Kentucky in the same sentence as Chuck Martin. Kentucky has an assistant coach named Chuck Martin. You think he's coming into the YouTube comment section to just kind of wake up his boys? Chuck, you're 100% right, man. Listen, and I've been a defender, right? I've been a defender. I've been a believer. But, I don't know what else there is to say. It's just a disappointing effort overall from the Kentucky Wildcats. And you think by now, I'm just disappointed because you would have thought by now that they would have not only, forget cleaned it up, you would have thought by now that they would understand that they need to compete for 40 minutes. My voice is so gone. Kentucky needs Nate Oates or Scott Drew. Oates has 2 SEC championships in 3 years. Cal wins 1 SEC tournament. Well, I'll tell you what. I don't think you're getting Nate Oates because he just signed a massive extension today. By the way, Alabama's defense is somehow worse than Kentucky. So, Nate Oates is the man. I said when I did my Kentucky was falling apart in January, who would I call piece? I said Nate Oates would be number 1. But he's not going anywhere for at least another 2 or 3 years. And listen, increasingly, he keeps signing these extensions. He's very clearly happy at Alabama. I know that everybody thinks that he's got to leave Alabama. As you said, he's won 2 SEC titles, 2 SEC tournament titles. He does not have to leave. We'll see what happens there. When somebody is like, man, why is there not many upsets in this tournament? It's because the best teams lost their conference games. Dev, I'll be honest, I don't really know what you're asking me, man. I love you and I appreciate your support. When somebody is like, man, why is there not many, if any, upsets this tourney? It's because the best teams lost their conference games. Does that just mean that everybody is susceptible to upsets, so there can't be upsets? Maybe that's what it means. It's like a Fight Club thing. Can't talk about the Fight Club. Chuck says, I still see Tennessee as an Elite Eight team. I'm so torn on them because I've been a believer. I have been a believer in Tennessee. But I don't know what else there is to say about those guys because they've had their opportunities and they simply haven't done what they need to do. And so late in this season, listen, I know it's not a be-all, end-all. I saw a stat, I think only 2 of the last 10 national champions have won their conference tournament. But I do think there's a stat that if you lose your first conference tournament game, like I don't think anyone's ever won the national championship, or it's been like 30 years or something like that. So that's just a bad effort from Tennessee. And like, I think the disappointing thing to me is you're coming off of a loss. You need a better effort. I'm telling you, Chuck, I'm a little bit more concerned about Tennessee than maybe I was 3-4 weeks ago. Who's the favorite to win the SEC tournament now? Give me Auburn versus Florida. I'll take Auburn. Great defense. Plus, Todd Golden worked for Bruce Pearl. A lot of love there. Bruce Pearl ain't the mentor ain't beating the pupil just yet, or the pupil ain't beating the mentor just yet. I think Auburn wins. I think Auburn's been good all year, and it's just because they're Auburn, they don't play the sexiest style. They don't have a star player. Well, I don't want to say that. That got Jimmy Dykes in trouble during the broadcast. They have a star player in Janai Broom, okay? But because they play 8, 9, 10 guys, it's not all about one guy. It's not all about them like Dalton Connect. It's not all about them like whoever, Jamal Shed at Houston, RJ Davis at North Carolina. But I think Auburn's a really good team, and I think they're going to win the SEC. SEC getting 0 teams in the Final Four. I mean, I need to see a bracket, you know? I think they could get none, or I think they could get 2. I don't think they will get 2. I think they could. Wouldn't shock me if Kentucky was in the Final Four. It wouldn't shock me if Florida was in the Final Four. Florida is really good. I've been saying it for about 5 weeks now. They beat Alabama twice, should have beat them a third time. They won at Rupp Arena. That's a good basketball team in Florida. All right, I'll tell you what. We got a great crowd, too. I don't want to go. So you got any final questions, go ahead and drop them in the comments section because we are going to head out of here soon. Yeah, somebody pointed out Jet Howard. That was Juwan's son who went in the 11th pick in the NBA draft last year. All right. Tell you what. I think that's all for tonight's show. Do me a favor. All you people watching on YouTube, all you people watching on Twitter, do me a favor. Go to YouTube. Subscribe to the channel. Put on notifications. Do your boy Torres a solid. I don't ask for much. Just go ahead, go to YouTube, subscribe, turn on notifications. We're going to do these live shows over and over and over and over again. Make sure also to like, give us the thumbs up, hit that thumbs up button. Helps with the algorithm. I do think I'm going to get out of here, though, because I don't have a voice. I got to do radio on Saturday and Sunday. Then we'll do a bracket show on Sunday. Again, bracket show Sunday about 10 p.m. Eastern time, so be ready for that. Bracket comes out at 6. I'll be on Fox Sports Radio. You can listen there. But I do think it is time for me to go. If you're not subscribed to the show, please make sure to do so. Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, Google Music, wherever you listen to podcasts, make sure to subscribe. Also, make sure to rate and review the show. Go ahead and give us a quick 5 stars. Let us know what you like, what you don't like, all that good stuff. Make sure you're following on social media at Aaron_Torres on Twitter, at Aaron Torres Pod on Instagram, Aaron Torres Podcast Questions at gmail.com, Aaron Torres Podcast Questions at gmail.com. All for tonight's show. I'm going to get out of here. Again, if you're watching on Twitter, go over to YouTube, Aaron Torres Sports Podcast, Aaron Torres Podcast, Aaron Torres. Find me, subscribe. Finally, thank you again to Circa Casino and Stadium Swim. They have been incredible. They have been unbelievable. We have done 5 shows in 3 days from 3 different locations, and I'm grateful to Aaron. That's the guy who set us up. And I'm grateful to Stadium Swim and Circa. If you're in Vegas, Circa Casino is where you got to go. Come watch games. The heated pools behind us. Stadium Swim is open 365 days a year. Come on Christmas Day, watch the NBA. Come in March, watch the NCAA tournament. Come on Thanksgiving Day, watch the Dallas Cowboys. So it is an incredible venue. By the way, I told you the Masters, they're going to have an incredible setup for the Masters. A different live shot of the different holes on every single hole. So this is the place to come. You can make bets at the pool. They have a kiosk at the pool, so make sure to do so. Appreciate everybody's support. If you're not subscribed, make sure to do so. Also on Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, Google Music, wherever you listen to the show. Make sure to rate and review the show on Apple or Spotify. I think that's it. I got no voice. Shout out to Torrin Craig. Shout out to Rachel, who hates my voice. Shout out to JJ Reddick, you F-head, unblock me. Oh, by the way, shout out to Pat McAfee. You got to unblock me as well. Finally, shout out again, Circa Casino, Stadium Swim behind me. I cannot thank them enough for the hospitality. I'll be back on Sunday from the normal Torres studio in California. Have a great night. Enjoy Championship Saturday, Championship Sunday. Next time we talk, we're going to have a bracket to talk about. I'll see you guys soon.